Morning guys, Tara from GFX here. We're going to be wrapping the side mirror on the GTR today. So as you can see, I've got some masking tape around all of the plastic trim pieces. That is purely so that when we do wrap the vinyl over the mirror, the vinyl doesn't stick to any plastic parts. It allows us to lift it back, release any tension and place back. So I'm going to be starting off with a piece of backing sheet. This is going to give me the shape of the mirror. We'll then go into the office, we'll cut out the vinyl for this and come back and wrap the mirror. So any scrap paper, doesn't have to be anything special. Just basically run your hands or your fingers around where the plastic mirror cap is, just to get an idea of the rough shape, which will show us how much film we need to trim off to wrap this mirror. The last thing you want to do is guess and you end up short on your film. So that's basically the rough shape. So first trim out a piece of vinyl. Okay, look, record me. Okay. Back in the office, just going to trim out a shape. Have the rough outline of it, and I'm going to be adding a bit of bleed around, just so I've got more material than I think I would need. Play it safe. Do it once. And this is the foam we're going to be using, Avery Gloss Black. Come into place, and again on this, safe than sorry, I'm still going to add more bleed. I'm also going to cut this off into a rectangle. We have the other mirror to do as well, so we take the template we've got, flip it over as it's mirrored, a pun on a pun, and trim out the other side. That's it. Okay, back to the car, we've got our film. So there's a few things we need to take into consideration when wrapping a side mirror. Number one is to have a look at where our compound curves are. And a compound curve is when a curve moves in more than two directions. So this is a single curve. That area over there is considered a compound curve, where we have the shape moving one way, another way, and a third direction. So that is going to be a high tension area. We need to ensure that when the film goes on here, it is under as little tension as possible to ensure we don't have failure going forward. So I typically would start on the flattest area. The reason I want to start here is I'm then able to pull the vinyl to a larger area where I have more space around it to work on. If I had to start this side, I'm then ending up with a very small piece of film that I've got to work into a small tight area. I don't have a lot of working space here and a lot of working space there. So there's another technique we're also going to use. It's called directional tension, where we are going to put tension into the film in a direction. I think it'll work better if I actually just show you. Move a bit of the backing sheet. We'll come in, and with a bit of bleed on that side, make contact. Now I'm leaving a lot of meat in front of the aerial, which is what I'm going to be putting pre-stretch into, that I'll work over that compound curve area. I'll then try and achieve glass, which is where the vinyl is perfectly flat. We don't have these compression folds in it. I'll then seat it on the head of the mirror and go from there. You can already see that my angle is not sufficient, so I have to reset the placement. Morning. Hello. Okay, so this area down here is where I could end up with a bit of problems in terms of vinyl compressing, giving me folds. So we're going to work that area. We're going to add stretch into this, let the vinyl cool down, seat it on the mirror, and then post application we'll shrink the film back onto the mirror. You try and heat up everything over a larger area as opposed to putting stretch into a very small surface area. So there's me adding stretch into it, and we'll let that cool down. Once it cools down, the vinyl will actually stay in that position. It won't shrink itself back. Okay. Now, starting small pieces at a time, they'll come from on the curve, and we will try and achieve glass. So there's some glass there. Film is nice and flat. Nice and flat over there. Just work slowly, work smart. Think about what you're doing. Have a look at what the film is doing. Pay attention to what the film is doing. As you gain experience with this, you'll actually start to figure out that you can read the film. You can see which way the film wants to move, which way it's going to pull back, where the tension is in it. So I'm going to put a bit more pre-stretch into this area. Let it cool down. And then stretch it over that compound curve. Now in that particular area, we haven't made contact with it yet. I have the film stretched out and it's cold. When we apply heat to that area, it's gonna kind of like suck itself back into position over that area, and when it actually does that whole sucking thing, it's removing all of that tension that we've applied into it, and it's settling itself back into its original position. So that whole area is gonna have the least amount of tension possible when applicating, or as a final result on the mat. Okay. Reset everything else. We'll come back to our starting point. Apply a little bit of heat. Get it nice and flat. You'll notice that all of this application so far, I'm just using my fingers. The vinyl is air free, so on initial tack it's not making 100% contact. Only after we've got the vinyl laid down with all the tension removed from all of the edges, we will then go over it again with a heat gun, and we will use a squeegee and we'll collapse all of the air channels. We'll then have 100% contact on the side and back. Okay, so let's do this little shrink back. Here we go. So we're going to gently warm it up, and I'm not going to pull the material down. I'm going to warm it up, and I'll actually feel the material pull itself back up. So I'm just going to use my hands to guide it to take the shape of that compound curve. I'm applying very, very little tension here with my hands. I'm just basically holding it up. I'm actually going to need the squeegee on this one. Magic. I don't know if you can actually see that on the camera, how the film kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a shrink wrap almost. The film sucks itself into that shape because of the tension that we put into it. Yeah, squeegee's gone. Yeah, thank you. Okay, now I do have a buildup of compression over there. So instead of fighting with that compression and trying to work it out and stretching the film, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go and lift back that section, take the compression and the tension that's here and migrate it that way to the edge of the mirror. The key is to end up with the least amount of tension possible in your wrap or in your install. said, we're going to be releasing the tension here. I think I'm actually going to shift the mirror the other way. I'll have better access down there. Sorry, you're not going to see anything. I'm just going to do this quickly to move that compression out. Settle that in place. That's it. Okay. A few little air bubbles. The joy of an air-free film. If you've got bubbles, even if they're in the center of the mirror, play with them gently. They will dissipate through the film. It will only work before post-heating. If you have a bubble after post-heating, you have collapsed the air channels. You'll then either need to re-lift the film or get a bubble popper, put a hole in the bubble, warm it up, let the bubble settle on its own, and then post-heat back over the bubble to settle the air channels again. Okay, so that big mountain of compression that we had here, I have shifted it down to around there, and it's also been shifted with no tension. So there's two ways to do the trimming and the finishing on this. Because I have done my best to get the film to the edge of the mirror with the least amount of tension, I should actually be able to just trim straight up against the edges of all the mirrors, but trimming onto the bracket side, not against the mirror. That's going to leave me with about 1.5 mil to 2 mils worth of film. When heating that little extra bleed up, take a squeegee and you can actually use that to tuck it all the way around into the recess or into the little join part of it, so it'll tuck itself in. The other way is to actually take the mirror off, trim away maybe a 5 mils worth of bleed, and tuck that around the inside of the mirror. So the issue that we've encountered with that is when you start to get to the tight curve areas and you have the wrap over section of the film that you're wrapping inside of the mirror, if you have too much thickness of the film, the mirror cap actually battles to clip back in to the correct place afterwards. So we always attempt to do it trimming up against or in the join line first. If that doesn't work, we'll then redo the mirror with the bleed and we'll go in afterwards. So the ideal scenario is not to remove any panels. Also, removing panels, you can break clips. Not worth that effort. So because I've got the masking tape all the way around the plastic trim part, it'll allow me to trim here gently without cutting the car. So I'm going to be trimming back about 15 millimeters away from where the edge of the mirror cap itself is. Because it's on the masking tape, it'll allow me to lift the film without it sticking anywhere. And then I'll go over it again and remove what? I lost my train of thought there. Let's see if I can find it after I finish trimming here. So just make sure I'm leaving enough bleed. What I was going to say is leaving this little bit, so there's probably around 10 mils, so the mirror cap starts there and I've left that much bleed. I'll then go and warm all of this up again around the entire edge of the mirror. If there is any more tension here, this bleed is going to shrink back. It's going to release any tension that could be left in the edges of the films. So when trimming like this, you're actually running very, very lightly across the surface of the film. Like a hot knife through butter, kind of. Oh, it's difficult to work in these small spaces. So you get your blade down correctly. Okay, anyway. Yeah, man. That's it. to go around the edges now, lift the vinyl off the masking tape all the way around. This will take a while. And I'm going to be removing the masking tape. So if the masking tape for some reason shifted during the installation of the first laydown of the film in the mirror, it could sometimes end up behind the film. And as we're finishing this off, we don't want anything behind the film on the mirror cap. So we'll go through, remove all the masking tape, just to guarantee that we are going to get contact onto the mirror and not any foreign objects that could be there. This piece is being stubborn. Let's go from here. Okay, masking tape out. And all the film is released. Well, it's not on any of the plastic parts, so I'm just going to go and give it a heat around all of these edges. Look for any tension that could have built up. Let it reseat itself, reset the tension that could be there. Now I know down here we'll have some tension. So as you see, I apply the heat, the film moves. That's it kind of resetting itself, or moving back into the original position that the film was in. Okay. Let's go back in and squeegee down any parts that may have lifted. And also now with resetting all the edges, all of the film around the edges has little or no tension at all, which means it's going to applicate into position and stay there. This just reduces any opportunity for failure in the future. And these GTRs have this secondary ridge on the mirror, which is such a pain to deal with, but if you use the correct techniques, and you know, the techniques aren't rocket science, it's logic. You understand how the film is going to move, what it's going to do long term, what it's going to do short term, when the car sits in the sun, when it's exposed to cold. And the ultimate key is to ensure that the film goes down with little to no tension on the edges. Film doesn't lift from the middle. The film will always fail and lift from your edges. So ensuring that your edges are down properly, you're going to have a pretty lengthy life out of your wrap. Nice little tight areas to work in here. Have some compression there. I'm going to just lift back here and reset that compression.
So
I'm going to reset a little bit of compression that I wasn't happy with. So we'll just lift back, give it a small lick of heat, go back in there. That's better. There we go. Okay, all the way up the side. And double check that everything has been applicated as far as possible. So now when it comes to the trimming part, if you want to come this side here, and we have the mirror cap. When we slide the blade in here, yes, there's only like half a mil. That half a mil does make a difference. I'm going to put the blade in, I'm going to run the blade against the plastic side. I'm not going to run it against the mirror cap side. It's going to leave me a few millimeters extra, but not even a few millimeters. It's going to be 0.5 of a millimeter, 0.8 of a millimeter of extra film that I'm going to be able to tuck into that gap to ensure that all the color is covered. Same thing down here. Going to run the blade in and run it against the indicator light. Gentle, smooth, clean motion. Don't be aggressive. Don't be in a rush. Okay. So already that looks nice and neat. What we'll do afterwards, I'm not going to do it with a squeegee now, but we'll run over it with the heat. Once again, right on that little 0.8, 0.5 millimeter of film, we'll heat it up. If there is any tension on those edges, the heat gun will reset it and settle it. We'll then chase it with the squeegee and get it in place. So I'm going to trim the side mirror up quickly. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back, guys. So I've trimmed back everything, trimmed it up against the plastic edge of the bracket holding the mirror cap. So I'm left with probably around 0.5 to 0.8 millimeters, and I have to use the heat gun to relax it. So I'm just going to go in with my finishing tool. This will allow me to get into that narrow gap between the two parts and ensure that any pieces that are left lifting off the vehicle or off the mirror cap are pushed into position, pushed into contact on the mirror cap. Because of the natural tension that we put into the film, I can see that a lot of the areas the film has already taken that shape and sucked itself into position. We just go over and make sure that everything is down nice and neat. One little fold there, which because of the air free we can just push that out and settle it. Perfect. Okay, so we now need to do a post heat and post squeegee, collapse all the air channels. Double check, make sure that that post heating didn't cause any problems, didn't lift back any more film that we would need to reseat again. So tension distribution around this point worked very well. We have no compression, no tension down where typically mirrors fail first. So this is the biggest problem area of a mirror cap generally. And the other problem that we encounter if the film is not installed correctly is in this double recess ridge that runs down there. So the solution to that, if you're having a lot of problem because you've got a compound curve with a recess with another compound curve on it, is to actually trim that piece out. Lay some knifeless tape in there, in that recess, wrap it as you would, pull the knifeless tape, pull that excess out of it, and then cut yourself an 8, 9, 10 millimeter thick pinstripe, run from somewhere down here through that area there. That'll allow you to fill the pin with no tension on it. It'll guarantee the film is going to stay in there, and if you get it right, you can finish the film up against the top leading edge over here it'll be invisible to eye. You'll never be able to see it. You'll also have that peace of mind that that mirror cap application is going nowhere. That's about it. Okay.